Can we switch the language?
Do you know what a referendum is?
I think it's like when a country will vote on a particular issue that needs double majority to get into the constitution.
Is it not the thing they use to change the constitution?
A referendum is a vote on a specific question about a proposed change to the constitution. This is done on a national scale, and those over the age of 18 must vote. The only way in Australia to change the constitution is by holding a referendum. This means the constitution cannot be altered without the approval of the people.
I'm a law student. Of course I know what the Constitution is.
But do you know what it is?
Can you explain what the Constitution is?
No, I
The
can't.
Australian Constitution is the set of rules by which Australia is run. The Constitution describes the structure, role and powers of the Australian Parliament and sets out how the Australian and state parliaments share the power to make laws.
Do you know what the requirements are for changing the Constitution?
No, I'm not sure. I wouldn't even know where to look.
The requirements for the amendment of the Constitution are stipulated in Section 128 of the Australian Constitution. This provision protects the Constitution from the ordinary process of amendment and rather prescribes a more onerous process of amendment. So the first step in this process is the Parliament brings forward the proposed law, and within 6 months the proposed legislation must be brought forward for a referendum. For a referendum to succeed, it must pass a double majority. The double majority requirement requires that in order for a referendum to pass, there must be a majority of yes votes in at least 4 out of 6 states, as well as an affirmative vote nationally.
Do you think that the requirements for changing the Constitution are too difficult to reflect society?
No, I don't think it's too difficult. I think you don't want to be changing the constitution every day. So I think the fact that the majority of them that referendums don't go through is probably a good thing, and we should keep it.
The first sentence of Section 128 states that this Constitution shall not be altered except in the following manner. This conveys that the original drafters of the Constitution wanted Australians to be able to mould and shape the Constitution to reflect the characteristics of today's current society. So therefore, I believe that the requirements for changing the Constitution are onerous, however, not too onerous to reflect Australian contemporary society.
Well, if we look at the 1967 referendum, it sought to amend the rights of Indigenous Australians in the Australian Constitution. The Constitution contained racially discriminatory provisions that required amendment. In 1967, they put forward the question of whether the words "other than the original Aboriginal people in any state" should be removed from Section 51, and whether Section 127 should be removed in its entirety from the Constitution. Unlike other referendums in the past, Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians worked together towards the campaign for the referendum. Anne Twomey expressed her views about public interest in the 1967 referendum. She observed that the constitutional amendments in 67 of themselves were not terribly significant. What was significant was the vote of the Australian people in terms of their recognition of Aboriginal people through that vote. So it's shown by a side-by-side comparison of the 1967 referendum and the 2023 referendum that society plays a critical role in the results of a proposed amendment to the Constitution. In today's contemporary society, the reflection of public beliefs surrounding the amendment of the Constitution was one of confusion and lack of understanding, as reflected in the 2023 referendum.
I think that we can come to the conclusion that the requirements being too onerous do reflect Australian contemporary society because it ensures that Australians are making educated votes.
Yes, I agree.
Do you understand what your role is when altering the Australian Constitution?
Isn't that a Parliament thing?
Well, the Australian people play a crucial role in amending the Constitution, ensuring that changes reflect the collective will of the country. However, that's only half the story. It's actually the Parliament that has the main role of creating and approving the bill, whilst the democratic nature of Australian governance implies that Parliament represents collective will. The final outcome ultimately lies in the hands of the Australian people's voting choices.
What is the voice referendum?
Isn't it that big election that was held at the end of last year something to do with your new Prime Minister?
Oh,
the singing show that Jason Derulo judges.
Holy, can I borrow that for the live show too?
There's a milestone for supporters of an Indigenous Voice to Parliament.
The Indigenous Voice to Parliament referendum.
For the Indigenous Voice to Parliament.
Legislation. The Voice referendum occurred on October 14, 2023. Australians voted in a referendum about whether to change the constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing a body called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. There was a proposed law which Australians were asked to approve at the referendum, which would have inserted a new section into the Constitution. This new section would have allowed Parliament to have the powers to make laws with respect to matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers, and procedures.
Do you know how constitutional change works in other countries as opposed to Australia?
Why? Do I need to know?
Do you know how constitutional change works in other countries as opposed to Australia?
I didn't know other countries have a constitution.
Let's talk about how the constitutional changes work in other countries. So, the US Constitution has been amended 27 times since its adoption in 1787. Similar to Australia, to amend the US Constitution, there must be a 2/3 majority in the Houses of Congress or a constitutional convention called by 2/3 of the legislature. 3/4 of state legislators must then complete ratification. The critical difference between amending the Constitution in Australia and the US is that Australia requires the public to complete the compulsory vote to aid in the decision of amending the Constitution. It is important to note that only 8 out of 45 referendums have been successful since 1901, leading to its changes in Australia. This in comparison to the US's 27 out of 11,848 proposed amendments. The drafters of the US Constitution envisioned a republic of civil virtue in which elected officials could pursue the people's interests in a non-partisan fashion.
Now we look at the Canadian Constitution. So the Canadian constitutional amendment process is similar to Australia's. So it follows the same democratic principle as Australia, where the citizens have a say in the constitutional change via a referendum. It also has the same double majority rule as Australia, where a minimum of 7 provinces must approve the change, collectively representing at least 50% of the entire population across all the provinces combined. And this has proven to be effective, like as in the double majority rule, because similar to Australia's 1999 referendum, which failed, there was the Charlottetown Accord in 1992, which proposed a number of changes to the Constitution, however was not successful due to the double majority rule.
It's apparent that both the US and Canada contain both similarities and difference to the Australian Constitution.
Did you vote yes or no in the 2023 voice referendum?
I voted no. I don't know much about it. I don't really understand why Australia's Indigenous people need their own parliamentary body.
What did you vote in the 2023 voice referendum?
Yes.
What did you vote for in the 2023 voice referendum?
No.
If you don't mind me asking, what did you vote in the 2023 voice referendum?
No.
What did you vote in the 2023 voice referendum?
I do not remember.
Did you vote yes or no in the 2023 voice referendum, and why?
I left it blank. I wasn't really sure what the changes would mean or what the question was asking, and I think a lot of others felt the same way.
You know, a lot of people see law as stuffy and boring, but I like to think of the Constitution as a living, breathing document.